Today, another big win for Donald Trump with the House passing the NDAA. That's the National Defense Authorization Act for 2020. It passed in a 377-48 vote. In all, 41 Democrats and 6 Republicans voted against it. That's the sort of vote, by the way, that you don't often see on anything not purely symbolic, the naming of a post office or something, and rarely even on something like that lately. So we're gonna return to some of those no's because I think they're important. We're also gonna have some video from one of the prominent no voters. But first, Donald Trump very happy to have his NDAA passing. He says, wow, all of our priorities have made it into the final NDAA. Pay raise for our troops, rebuilding our military, that's a very specific priority. God knows what that means. Paid parental leave, border security, and Space Force. Congress, don't delay this anymore. I will sign this historic defense legislation immediately. But will he? Because the House passed it, controlled by Democrats. They're gonna have to square the circle with the versions and all that with the Senate. Will Mitch McConnell actually be up to that? I mean, his strategy recently seems to have been, until this impeachment thing is wrapped up, he's not gonna do anything because he believes it will hurt the Democrats. In this case, Trump is desperate to sign this thing, so it'll be interesting to see if that strategy continues. But while this is a big win for Donald Trump, not necessarily a big win for people who care about human rights, civilian deaths, and all of that, as well as massive waste in the spending for our military. So let's talk about some of what ended up in this final version. The final bill dropped a slew of other Democratic priorities that were in the House bill originally, including language to reverse Trump's transgender military ban, block Trump from taking military action against Iran, end all US support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, force the cleanup of cancer-linked chemicals that we've talked about several times on the show, block the deployment of the low-yield nuclear warhead, and ban new transfers to the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. And that paragraph is the sort of paragraph that reminds us that you can quickly put words in an order and it sort of glosses over how significant those are. Almost any one of those things is worthy of an incredible amount of attention. Trying to reverse Trump's transgender ban, that should be a slam dunk. How do you not press for that to be in the final version? Stopping the deployment of the low-yield nuclear warhead. This brings us one step closer to casual use of nuclear arms in regular conflicts. That's in the middle of the paragraph. That's just one of the things. We could have just cut that out. That seems significant. So all of these priorities, the House, dominated by the Democrats, they couldn't get this stuff in there. But what they did get was $120 billion extra dollars for the military. That amount, which for the vast majority of the countries around the world would be an expansive military budget all its own, that's just the increase they're getting. Already a huge amount. And I want to give credit to Khanna because he's been a leader in this issue for a long time. He spoke on the House floor about this. You should definitely go find his full address, but we have a few of the highlights right here.
I rise in strong opposition to this defense authorization. There are many things that you can call the bill, but it's Orwellian to call it progressive. Let's speak in facts. When President Obama left, the defense budget was $618 billion. This defense budget is $120 billion more than what President Obama left us with. That could fund free public college for every American. It could fund access to high-speed, affordable internet for every American. But it's worse. The bipartisan provision to stop the war in Yemen, stripped by the White House. The bipartisan amendment to stop the war in Iran, stripped by the White House. The bipartisan provision to repeal the 2002, the George W. Bush authorization for the war in Iraq, which is sending our troops overseas, stripped by the White House. At some time, we can't just rhetorically give standing ovations when the president says we're gonna end endless wars and continue to vote to fund them.
He is 100% right and consistently right on these issues. $120 billion more because I think a lot of objective observers in the final year of the Obama administration were thinking our military is not big enough. We only spend more than virtually every other country on earth combined on our military. Who thinks that the way we should allocate funds is that first, before everything else, let's not talk about healthcare, let's not talk about education, anything like that. Just for the military, if we can't simultaneously defeat the militaries of all other countries combined, then we're not safe. And even that, is that really enough? Is there any limit where we will boost it another 100 billion, 200 billion, and Republicans will think, okay, we've probably gone too far? No, because the money is going to go to private military contractors, it's gonna go to buying more tanks, more bombs. They're gonna find excuses to use it. And they've certainly got great options in here, because taking away the authorization for the war in Iraq means that at any time Donald Trump, who swears he doesn't want to be there, could jack up troop levels again. In Syria, God only knows how much of this money is going to be turned into bombs and dropped over Syria. We're gonna continue to be working with Saudi Arabia to make sure that every single civilian in Yemen has to fear death on a daily basis. All of that in a bill that is being pitched as progressive. What's progressive about it? I echo Khanna's words there. One good win, the inclusion of a policy that would grant all federal workers 12 weeks of paid parental leave in what's being touted as a historic deal to give the benefit to more than 2 million Americans for the first time ever. That's good. And at what cost? We have the majority in the House. That's supposed to be worth something. He can't get this bill without the Democrats signing on to it. And so we should, with that power, the ability to grind this to a halt, we should be asking for so much more. The parental leave, that's great. I would argue like advancing it for a couple of million Americans that's small potatoes. Literally every American should have access to that. But we should be getting so much more, and not just the stuff that I listed in that paragraph. Why are we involved in these disastrous conflicts? Use Donald Trump's words against him. He says he's against these forever wars. He says that Barack Obama and past politicians, they were stupid and wasteful in being involved in these conflicts, and yet he continues our involvement in them, and now we'll have even more money to pursue those military adventures. This is moronic. This is one of the worst moves I've seen from House Democrats over the past year. Not all of them, of course. Khanna voted against it. Members of the squad and other members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Tulsi Gabbard, there were 41 Democrats who voted against it and 6 Republicans who have at least some measure of principles in this area. But this is insanity. When I talk about cutting the military budget in half, and people like gasp and say, well, how could we possibly defend ourselves? We were doing just fine a couple of years ago when it was $120 billion less. Now in the future, under a future progressive president, we're gonna have to fight against the same sort of response just to get it back down to $600 to $700 billion. That's how insane this is. And by the way, turn on CNN right now, turn on MSNBC. Are they gonna stack panels saying, how are we gonna pay for this $120 billion? What is this actually buying? I guarantee it's not. Best case scenario, it's gonna be finally some bipartisanship in DC. That's amazing. Well, this is the sort of bipartisanship you can always count on. Raising the military budget, that's the easiest thing to do in government, even if it doesn't actually reflect our values in any way, and certainly not progressive values. Thank you for watching this clip from the Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.